Welcome back to Vidanza Disc Golf. Today we need to talk about whether this off-season form change, which you guys have been following the journey of if you've been watching the channel, has worked or not. I just finished up my first practice round for the first tournament of my year, which I'm gonna be playing MPO. It's a pro-only A tier here in Denver called 303 Open. You guys can definitely follow along this weekend. I'll have practice round posted for it as well as the tournament coverage of it. But this is kind of the moment that this whole offseason has been leading towards. Because if you guys have watched Project 100, it was my goal to add about 100 feet of usable distance this offseason, also to practice a lot of putting and just work on a well-rounded game here in disc golf. I'm gonna cut in a second to a side-by-side of my form nowish as well as my form then. I say nowish because I have not honestly been spending a lot of time working on my form. It's been a lot more time focusing on videos as my wife is actually leaving on a 3-month road trip tomorrow. So we've been spending a lot of time together, making sure I get these videos done, fulfilling some obligations that I have with sponsors here, and figuring out my bag. So my form work has gone a little bit to the wayside. And honestly, I'm a little sad about how this whole offseason went because my form isn't where I want it to be. And I'll cut to that now and explain the side-by-side. All right, welcome back to the office. This is actually exciting for me. This is the first time I've actually taken a look side-by-side at what this form is gonna look like. And I have kind of 3 intermediate periods. I have before my form stage started in December, and then we're gonna take a look at February, and then now. So a couple months in, there actually were some things that changed a little bit along the way, and then now kind of what are we looking at? Now, if you guys have been here a while, you know there are a couple main things that I really needed to work on. The first was hip movements. We want our hips going kind of up, up, down, up. Right here, my hip is up. Right here, just up compared to this other hip. So there's a line going this way. And then if we move forward a little bit, we can see it kind of gets level. It's like not really up, and then now it's down a little early, and I'm kind of pulling through. We're gonna look at that in slow motion. Here, I'm throwing graces at this time as well. I don't really throw graces anymore. If you guys watch my in the bag, they're actually flying less far for me than the disc that I throw now, which is kind of exciting to be a reality. But we're gonna watch basically the foot movements because the upper body, there's issues all over the place, but Josh, who I was working with over Throw Disc Golf, wanted to coach from the feet up. So first step here, we can see this is already pretty perpendicular. It's basically parallel to the target. And so I like now, instead of having this foot here, to place this foot more at like a 45-degree angle-ish, because as we're gonna see, I rotate back and now I'm already like behind the target and my hips are completely facing away from the target. So I'm gonna have to completely open them up 180 degrees, which means there's not a lot of coil in them because my shoulders and my hips are both facing back. So there's no shoulder coil against my hips. Hips should be here, my shoulders should be here, and now there's like a stretch there, whereas there's not really a stretch, it's just rotational movement. Some would call that rounding. But my hips need to be up a little bit more here, and I also need to be facing forward. A lot of issues. I'm already also fully extended even before I get this X step foot down. There are some redeeming qualities here. One thing you're gonna notice is this off arm comes through, not redeeming. This is something that I've noticed from like literally 3 months into playing. Don't know why that started. I'm also kind of dipping down a little bit on this because my shoulder is high because of that, whereas it should be dropping down a little. Very bad at throwing hyzers before, and I kind of think if you can't throw hyzers, you probably have bad form because you're probably throwing over the top like this. Because now I'm gonna come through. This knee kind of gets into a decent position. I don't brace super well, but I do throw against it, and these shots went about 380 feet. I was able to hit into the 400s, but I mean, look at how much forward momentum I have moving over that disc. So all the way turned around, coming through, bang. Not terrible acceleration through. That thumb kind of makes it throw a little bit nose up because you want to keep your thumb up to throw nose down. And if you pop that thumb down, it's going to throw nose up, so that can help with upshots as well. Really not ideal. Let's move a little bit more forward. We started working on the hips. I got the hip movements down, and these are all videos that I'm going to link a playlist somewhere, probably in the description, to Project 100, which is just all of my training videos up until this point, including this one. Project 100 is done, guys. It's over. My season has started. So it's kind of crazy. That's the first time I said that. Project 100 is done. Wow. So we worked from the ground up, got our feet right, and then there was a little bit more arm movement and things, and we'll talk about the things that I'm still needing to work on. But let's look at February. This is in February in Florida. Man, what a good face. I look like I am so high, but I've never done any. I'm not a good disc golfer for that. Oh yeah, I was really focusing at this point on getting that arm up and away from my body, because so we're gonna move forward and we're already gonna see stepping here that step is much more at that 45-degree angle. What this does is it allows your body to swing behind, have a little bit of rotation. But since you're starting, rotate a little bit this way. When it rotates, it's actually gonna rotate you parallel to the target, which is kind of what you're wanting to look at. X step is fine. This honestly is still a little bit more backwards, but as you can see, look at how high this hip is as compared to it was before. So this hip is way higher. Also, there's a nice little Vidanza Mini in the pocket. Classic. I was already fully extended before this point now, and now I'm going to be extending as I'm gliding out. I get fully extended about here, and my foot isn't even on the ground yet, my front foot. We'd really ideally get this full extension to happen as that heel hits the ground and then pull through, because as we're gonna see, I start honestly not too bad. I actually am still staying extended. So that's not the end of the world because you don't want to start pulling before this gets to the ground. But look at how wide my stance is for being like a 2.5 foot tall person. This is very wide and it's not going to allow these hips to engage quite as much as they could if they were a little bit closer, but it's going to pull through across the top. Let's actually go frame by frame here. So really not bad on the pull through, but this leg is just kind of being a little bit of an anchor. It's not really transferring weight, and you're gonna watch all of my weight here is gonna shift right over top of this foot. And we actually want to be throwing from behind that foot. So that's what I worked on after this, but we get into a decent little area. The body stays pretty similar. Still don't like what this off arm is doing. That's one of the main things I still need to work on, honestly. So this shoulder is getting above this shoulder, which is good. And this isn't the end of the world, but my body weight is shifted too forward here. We want it to shift forward, but it's too like, actually, that's not terrible. It's not awful. It's not great. It actually looked a little bit worse, but as we can see, I'm not gonna brace super well. I'm gonna kind of fall over the lie a little bit. So that means I'm moving my weight a little too forward. It's kind of hard to tell, but let's take a look now at what my most recent form is looking like. Definitely not ideal, and there are some things that we can work on with it, but this was just about a week. This was like 2 or 3 weeks ago. I haven't really done a lot of form work since then. This is kind of what it's looking like if you go ahead and watch my videos now, but it is much more beautiful, in my opinion, to watch me throw the disc now than it was before. It's going a little bit further. It's much more controlled because I never turn away and have to like whip around. But let's just take a quick look at my form now. I think I'm throwing a destroyer here. Yep. So as you can see here, I'm staying my head forward. This is another thing that I really am trying to work on even now, is keeping my head forward and these shoulders facing the target until after my X step, which is not something that we've seen in any of this, but my shoulder kind of comes out. This right here, my off arm not touching the disc, is something that I'm working on to try to get my off arm down sooner instead of kind of crashing into my body like it has been. This foot is at that more 45 degree. And here we're seeing my X step isn't down and I'm already starting to turn my head back. I would love to keep this a little bit more forward and continue watching that and keeping this shoulder up until my X step hits, because when I don't do that, you can see the disc has already started to rotate a little bit where it's being like left in the same position this whole entire time, which isn't bad. I would rather it continue to move forward with my body until after the X step is there. So maybe the disc is here and then it gets left behind, because you're gonna see as I pull back, I'm allowing my head to come back a little bit more as well so that I can get a more full coil. And as we can see, my hips are in line here and my shoulders are very much coiled against them, which is what we want to see. But my step is a little too big. I might like this to be a little bit shorter. It gets down. I'm fully extended a little early here. So I'm fully extended and I just kind of hold it there. As long as I don't really start to pull before my heel gets down, which I kind of do, it starts to pull a little bit. This is definitely a better stance. It's still a little bit wide, but we're gonna see that this weight is able to shift a little bit better, staying back a little bit too much, but look at how little my body weight goes over that front leg as compared to the last shot that we threw. And so I'm throwing out at 10 o'clock. I'm able to use my full body because I'm trying to leave my head back. And this is a position that I don't mind too much, but I'd rather be in this position, like with my legs here, right about here. So this is one of the main things that I'm needing to continue to work on. There's a couple. One, this off arm right here should be pushed down. I don't think you should actively work on your off arm unless it's hindering you, and for me, it is. So I want that kind of Silas Schultzy where you can watch him as he comes to throw, his off arm just goes, shoots down, and you see what that does? It lifts this elbow and shoulder up, which creates a much bigger way to sling out the disc. So mine is actually more pushing forward, which is opening me up a little bit early sometimes. And so if I don't very intentionally keep my head down and facing forward as I throw out, I tend to over rotate and release a little bit early, and it causes me to fall off my brace a little. Here we could see I'm also a little bit early with my pull through, and I think that's because I start to leave the disc behind me before I finish my X step. And so that's something that I might try to add a little bit of a pump like you see Paul McBeth do right before he gets to his X step so that his disc is forward and then it gets left behind him, extended out, and then pumped through. I'm not mad about it because these discs are flying very good for me. My destroyers are consistently at that 400-ish mark, but there are these little things like keeping this elbow out, which I really like the look of this because the disc is in through this pocket. I think I'm a little bit opened up, maybe because the shoulder's pushing forward, but it's really not bad. I'm able to get a full extension, not short arming it anymore, which is something that I was doing, and I'm staying behind myself. And then because of that, I'm pretty well braced. I'm able to stay balanced on this foot, which is what I like to see. But as you can see here, if you watch like someone like Ezra, he does this kind of same movement that I just did, finishing that shot right here, but his left leg stays to the left side of this leg, not in front of it, which I think is a consequence of me throwing out a little bit early because my hips are firing a little bit later than they maybe should. This is all just kind of my conjecture and understanding. The more Anheuser I throw, the worse my brace becomes, but that's how it happens with most people. And I think if I am to fix these timing issues, it probably will be a little bit easier. We'll watch one more quick throw. So it's definitely not bad. You can see through all of this that it has gotten significantly better. My base for how I'm throwing and the things that I can work on has become significantly better because my form as a whole looks much, much better. There's still things to tweak, unfortunately at this point, but this is a years-long process. People continuously tweak their form. I'm throwing the most consistent and farthest that I ever have, and I feel like my game has come around the most. So the one last thing I wanted to say before I get back into the other video is sometimes because I really want to have a good brace, I kind of force the brace by not putting my body into it. So in the tournaments and when I'm playing, I try to not think about this at all. I'm not trying to think about form. I'm not trying to think about looking pretty when I throw. I'm trying to think about executing the best shot. And my body has had all these reps to figure out how to do that at this point. And obviously that can get cleaner and cleaner and be farther and farther the more I work at it. But as of right now, I'm not going to go into this tournament thinking, okay, let me make sure that I brace. Let me make sure that like this looks good for the videos I'm going to put out. I'm really just going to be thinking, let me make sure that I put my weight into this shot, and a lot of times me transferring that weight into that shot doesn't happen when I'm focusing on a brace. So let's talk a little bit about what this means while I get some much needed putting practice in, because my putting hasn't felt phenomenal right now. But all this means is that during tournaments like the one I just practiced, I'm not thinking about form at all. Maybe only my cues to make sure that I throw well. Like for me, making sure I don't watch my throw so I keep my head down. That's really helpful for me when I throw out to make sure I hit my lines and my gaps as well as keep the nose down. Otherwise, I'm really not thinking about form at all. I don't care about my brace. I don't care about all these things that we've talked about because now is not the time to work on form while I'm in a tournament. I was really hoping that that would be the case for this whole entire year. My goal was to work on form this off season, so I didn't have to work on it during the season. Come on. Unfortunately, I actually really failed at that goal. So this season, I'm gonna have to continue working on form. And let me explain a little bit of what that's gonna look like now that I'm playing tournaments again. Because I have a tournament here on out basically every weekend except for one weekend in June for the next 2 months. And during that time, I really want to make sure my rating gets high. And I feel like my play is the best that it's ever been. I feel like my form is the best that it's ever been. And I'm not throwing short because today my practice round, it was UDisc. So take it for what it's worth, but it was an uphill slight drive and I pumped a turnover 460, left myself with a mid-range in on like an 800-foot par 4. So really happy with how things have come along. It's just not exactly where I want it to be. And that's actually exciting because my distance is the best that it's ever been consistently. I feel like because I did this yesterday, but I wasn't recording. If I go to a field and I throw 5'10" distance drivers, they're not gonna be much shorter than 395, and they're normally gonna be averaging around 420, some hitting into the 440s. So really happy with how that looks, especially because I know my form isn't perfect. My timing is still a little bit off, and there's room to continue to grow. That being said, the main focus on this season is scoring well, because I'm trying to get to 1,000 rated by the end of the year, which I think is possible. I feel like my play is significantly better than it ever has been, which I'm very excited about. And I was averaging 970-ish, 975 at the end of my last tournament season last year. So making sure I'm not thinking about form during my tournaments, just thinking about throwing the disc well and focusing on scoring are going to be super important. While between tournaments, I'm going to continue working on form. And this is something that I don't necessarily think is the best thing for everybody to do, but I know that my distance where it is now is not able to compete at the highest levels of disc golf at the Pro Tour, which I don't necessarily want to get a tour card now. My goal is just to cash in an event and then see kind of where we go from there. But if I want to be able to do that, having more distance will be helpful. And so as long as I'm continuing to round out my game, like working on up shots, which we'll talk about tomorrow, I don't see this off season as a failure. I see it as really hard to have lived in a van, moved into an apartment with absolutely no furnishings, furnished the whole thing, and figure out a bag here at elevation that'll also work for sea level and work on distance over a 4-month period, because I really only had from the middle or end of December until now. And I have years left in my disc golf career, hopefully, thanks to you guys watching this channel. So it's gonna look like probably Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, ironing out 1 or 2 form things and really just working on them. But the biggest reason that I think I'm able to do that is because during this off season, I built a really good base that I can work from. I feel like I was maxing out at what I was able to do with my old form, which is kind of pulling over the top. And there were some things that honestly are a little bit better in that form than it is now, like my explosiveness, getting my whole body through it, because now I'm a little afraid to not brace. But because that base is good, I don't feel like there's gonna be anything that I do to my form that is going to drastically change how I throw or how I aim or how I score. And so working on it during the week and then doing a practice round or 2 and a fieldwork session before I actually get onto the course to see how my discs are flying, how I'm throwing that week, and then go and play around is gonna be really important. But that's not kind of the end of it. It's not just working on tweaking these little things throughout the season. There's one question mark still in my season that I haven't built out yet. If you guys watched my Q&A video where I answered a lot of your burning questions, hopefully, I talked a little bit about my schedule there, and to reiterate that schedule, wow. I'm playing this tournament, 303. Next weekend, I travel about 4 hours south to Pagosa Springs to play a tournament there. The weekend after I come back, I have another tournament here in Denver. The weekend after that, I actually go to Kansas City. Then I go to meet with a content creator in Arkansas. Then come back up here for another tournament in Fort Morgan, which is about an hour north. And then I go to Kansas City, or maybe Emporia, Kansas, if I can get into the DDO off the wait list. But after that, it's all up in the air. I don't have any tournaments planned, and that was intentional because it'll be the start of July. I have some qualifiers, so if I get into Des Moines Challenge or Casey Wide Open, or if I Monday qualify for some Pro Tour events, which I'm gonna try to follow the tour a little bit and try to Monday qualify, I might be able to get into those and play those. Otherwise, I'm really just gonna be buckling down and focusing, maybe in Minneapolis, on my form and really dialing that in for another 3 or 4 weeks, really intentionally, and then getting back into a season, because August, September, I'm gonna have a lot more tournaments that I plan on playing again. So, not the fullest year, but hopefully that means that next year I'm really set up well so that I can compete at the highest level with really good form. And if it takes having a really good offseason again, it'll be worth it. I hope he photobombed me. That'd be kind of funny, but definitely is a sidewalk over there. I do unfortunately anticipate that this will be something that I work on for probably about another year at least. But honestly, that should be helpful because there was a lot of pressure and urgency that I put on this form change that didn't necessarily need to be there. And it probably added a lot of stress. And I'm the type of person who lots of things can become life or death, like, oh, I have to do this or I have to be really good at this. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that way quickly. It's a journey that can take time, and I know that my cashing at a Pro Tour goal is a multi-year goal potentially. Maybe it happens this year. Absolutely not planning on it, and it'd be awesome if it did. But I know that takes time, so why wouldn't getting good enough to cash at a Pro Tour event also take time? Like, that just makes sense as well. So I just need to give a little more grace to myself and realize it's gonna take time while playing the best golf I can and continually getting better. But I also remembered that last year I added about 50 feet of usable distance during the season by just playing more. And now that I have a good base and I'm not really focused on throwing my arm out as much, my arm can probably heal a little bit because there is a little tendonitis in the elbow, but I mean, that's been lingering for a long, long time. Work on a little bit more of my conditioning and my strength training, and then also playing really good disc golf. So really excited for how this year is gonna come out. Thank you guys for following this journey. I'm so excited for tournaments to come back. I am so competitive, and I had a pretty good practice round today playing blind. I anticipate that there's gonna be a lot of birdies out here. People are gonna be able to shred this course. Hopefully I can be one of them for at least a round. I'm gonna kind of keep my goals a little close to the chest for the whole season, but a couple of my quick goals for this tournament are cash. I want to start a cash streak. I would love to get a top 10, top 5 USDGC qualification because this is a USDGC qualifier, but I'm not trying to focus on that. I'm just trying to cash. I want to have one round that I'm really proud of, and I want to beat one pro who came into town. So hopefully those will happen. The pro one is the last one, but it's really just cashing and having a round that I'm proud of, and also not giving up, never giving up even during a bad round. But that's that. If you guys want to check out my In the Bag, which I just finalized and made a video for yesterday, check it out right down there. I think you'll enjoy that a lot. Otherwise, hope you liked this video. Please drop a like if you did. Subscribe to the channel. Join the Patreon if you want to support me if you like. And I have some this for sale. I don't know why I started talking like this, but I did. Okay, love you guys. Bye. Time to practice more putting.